Rothery.
Rothery. All right.
Yeah,
Somebody with
Rothery.
the fun to say last name. I'll
I
make
know,
sure.
right?
All right. Let's welcome worshipful brother Will Rothery to the Craftsman Online podcast. Welcome, my brother.
Thank you for having me. I very much appreciate it. I've been listening to you for a little while now, and I'm pretty excited to get this episode done.
I'm pumped because I think this is the first friendly Canadian voice that we've had on the Craftsman Online podcast, eh? So,
Oh, you know it, eh?
Happy to have you on board. And you're also like joining the list, and I'm sure you have this as well. As much as we curse the pandemic and everything that happened with COVID-19, I think one of the benefits is it opened up our world through technology to connect with other Freemasons all around the world. So you're on a list of other brothers who I've had conversations with. I feel like I've known you. I've now seen you on my computer screen in front of me. We have never met in person, which is kind of crazy. So for our listeners' benefit, tell us a little bit about your lodge in Canada, and tell me a little bit about your brothers.
Well, I'm from a lodge called Hiram Lodge number 14 in British Columbia and Yukon, Grand Lodge. And man, it's been such a phenomenal journey. I mean, having a name like Hiram number 14 is already it's kind of it's almost a name that you have to live up to some extent. My lodge is really well known for its degree work, and so that's kind of what we focus on for the most part. It's just doing great degree work, and man, we have an awesome group of guys in my lodge, and yeah, I'm pretty excited to be a part of it and to keep the tradition going on.
All right. Obviously, we have you on to talk about the new millennials, the new leadership that's starting to rise up, that next generation of leaders in Freemasonry. So does your lodge kind of fit that profile, the demographics? You got younger guys, you got a older guy lodge, a mix maybe of the two?
Yeah, for the most part, we have a number of older guys. Our numbers have dwindled quite a bit since COVID. I think everybody's kind of felt that a little bit, but we have a good mix. Like our core guys in the lodge, about half of them are young guys and half of them are older guys, probably 60 to 80, somewhere around there.
Okay, I was just gonna ask the question what you thought an old guy was. So, all right, I'm safe. Not really. I'm somewhere in the middle, which is good. Well, the funny thing is, like,
yeah, go on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, it's funny that we say that. Like, when it comes to Freemasonry, I'm 34 years old. I'm basically an adolescent at this.
Just started shaving in the craft.
Yeah, pretty much. I just started shaving. I just started putting my socks on by myself.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to see the demographic. I mean, when I first joined, I was like, what am I going to have in common with some of these older guys? And man, it's incredible. Life is what we all have in common. And
let's talk about that, because I think that's one of the biggest myths that comes with your generation, the millennials. And you're not that far behind me. You're about 10 years younger than me. I'm 46. And my lodge, as far as active members go, there's our secretary, who I know is or our treasurer, who's in his 60s. The secretary and I are the same age, and then it's all guys your age. So I don't feel that much older than them, but I am, on paper older, and in life in kind of maybe a different place. But let's talk about that. There's a huge stereotype, and I know we blame millennials for everything. Like, your generation has ruined everything, and you've barely been around. Right. But what was it like as somebody your age coming into a lodge that maybe you first saw some older men that were there, but then you also saw some guys that were closer to your own age? Like, tell us what that felt like.
Yeah, I mean, oh man, it was incredible. I mean, first coming to the lodge, there's definitely that stigma that you almost feel like, being the younger guy in the lodge, that you're almost going to be looked over, something like that. I never once felt that, ever, in the entire time. When I first started coming to the lodge, and because I started going to dinners and stuff like that, we actually have our dinners before our meeting, which is very odd. Like, most lodges around here don't even do that. But it allowed me the chance to get to know some of the older guys, and a lot of them would come up to me and introduce themselves and talk to me and just spark up a conversation and get to know me a little bit more. And that really helped bridge that gap of feeling like there was this age gap, or feeling like there was this, like I was the young guy and they were the older guys, and that we didn't have anything in common. And I was completely changed my mind on that, where a lot of the guys, yeah, they would come up to me and they would chat with me. A lot of the time it was, hey, what do you do for a living? And just those type of things, you get the conversation going, and then you start talking with them, and then it doesn't stop at that point,
Mm.
really.
That's what's so interesting. Our experiences are pretty much the same universally across
Mhm,
all of the jurisdictions and lodges in Freemasonry, just with
mhm,
the basis of the ritual, and it all kind of fundamentally comes from the same place. Of course, there's different practices or traditions that certain parts of the world or the country or your jurisdiction do, even if you go in between lodges in your local area.
mhm,
But what I find really interesting is that when it comes to the men that are coming in my opinion, it really doesn't matter if you're a 20 something or you're a 70 something,
mhm,
because you're in essence coming in the same way as a poor blind candidate that has no idea. And everybody kind of does their own little homework to some extent. Some guys come in like off the street completely blind, don't want to do any of the reading. Other guys have a small library that they've
mhm,
invested, time and a lot of money into learning about some of the secrets of the craft. But you really don't learn anything until the night you take that first degree, and then you're like, okay, this is what this experience is supposed to be about. Can you
mhm.
think of any other thing that you may have been a part of where the entry to it was just so level set that way?
It's hard to say. I mean, I can't really think anything off the top of my head that really introduces you. Because I mean, before you take that first step, I mean, you might have some guys in your lodge that might explain things to you a little bit, and give you kind of an idea of what you're getting yourself into. But really, until you take that first step, you really have no idea. And it's nice when you have guys who kind of prepare you a little bit better for that. But man, I can't think of any instance in life where you just I wouldn't say thrown to the wolves, because I think that's a little extreme, but I mean that first degree, you're hammered with so much knowledge and information that that first step that you take, it's almost overwhelming. And for some people, it is overwhelming, and they don't fully understand. It's like, hey, you got to learn a certain portion of what you did here tonight, and you have to recite it again. And the reason why is because we want you to understand that, and we want
Mm,
you to know exactly what you went through. And man, it's hard to think about any other instance in life where you're just getting you're just getting such an amalgamation of knowledge just thrown at you all in one night. It's almost too hard to completely fathom. You have to kind of go over it one or two more times after the fact just to kind of grasp and understand what it is that you really went through.
mm. Let's talk about that for a second. Walk me through what
Yeah.
it's like going through the degrees and the proficiency and all the work, as we like to call it, into becoming a master mason.
Oh man. Well, for us, I'm not too sure how much it varies. I would assume that it's actually pretty similar. A lot of lodges in Canada do what we call as Canadian work, and my lodge was very lucky. We got ancient American work from the California Americans, or the Americans that came up from California brought their work with them through Oregon, through Washington, up to Victoria, and then up my little island. And so I'm very fortunate to have ancient American work. Seeing the contrast of the two different works is just insane. But for our lodge, uh, we do there's a lot of work that you have to do in between the degrees. In the Canadian work, it's very straightforward and it's very modern speech. Whereas in ancient American, we're using quite literally Old English, and so it adds a little bit of flair in between the degrees. But a normal prove up at like EA in the Canadian work would be like 3 pages. Ours is five, and then it gets heavier from there with each degree that you do, and you add a little bit more on. But it's great because the first degree you get is the building block. That's the foundation. That's what you build off of. And so once you have that first degree and you've memorized the memory work, and you've come into lodge, and you do the memory work in front of the lodge, and you've proved your proficiency in that first degree, then you move up to the second degree. And it's very much a cut. You already have the mold, you have the structure, you have everything that you need. You're just adding a little bit to it from that point, which we might add a page or two extra. And our obligations are numerous and weighty, to say the
Mm.
least. And
Well,
by the time by the time you get up to Master Mason, it's a mouthful. It's about 10 pages long, and it's a lot of it's a lot of it's a lot to handle. It really is.
mm.
But man, you feel fulfilled, very much fulfilled, when you finally have done the work. You've built all the blocks onto each other, and now you truly have the foundation to move forward as a Freemason, as a human being, as a man. And that's really where you start to begin to do the work, the real work.
Mm. So there's a word you tossed out. And you mentioned it a few times when it comes to the origins or the style of the ritual that you do. And I remember when you
Mhm.
first used this word in front of me. And for those that are watching on YouTube Live, where we now stream our podcast recordings, and you can also watch the episodes as they're unfolding, you said ancient American. So when I hear ancient American, I think of like, oh, you mean like the before the like even the before the Native Americans. So like the people that were here when like dinosaurs were still around here that really weren't Americans. They just happened to live in what we now call America. When you use the term ancient America, what does that mean to those of us that aren't familiar with it?
So I know it's a very broad spectrum term. I feel like it probably does throw some people off. Honestly, I really uh, I can't really explain much more other than it's just referred to as ancient American. Even in my blue book, in the first page, you open it up and it says ancient American right in there. I don't know why they labeled it ancient American, but
Mm,
for some reason, that's what they called it when they brought it up here. I don't know if it was just to signify that it was vastly different from the Canadian work that was going around at the time, or maybe some of the English work. I know there was Scottish lodges, there were Irish lodges, and then there were the English lodges, all up and down the whole area that I live in, basically. And so when they amalgamated to just going with I think it was United, yeah, when that lodge joined the United Grand Lodge of England, and they dispensated that work, that's what we got called, apparently.
gotcha. Yeah, I was going to say
Yeah.
it has to have something to do with the origins of the ritual, and as you kind of were touching on all the
Mhm.
fractions that started to break off. And so when I hear ancient American, I'm thinking this could be Preston Webb, but a very early version of that, or maybe one that has more of an English feel to it than maybe
Mhm.
something that would have been practiced on the East Coast, because as you
Mhm.
mentioned, it had to get all the way over to California, then up to Canada as the world's longest telephone game continued. Something to Google and study myself after this
Yeah.
episode. I'm digging this. Well, let's get back
It,
to our time and
yep.
our purpose for this podcast today. And we wanted to talk about millennial leaderships, this new generation of leaders who are now into Masonic lodges. As we mentioned at the intro, you have the honorific title of Worshipful Brother, which means you have served your lodge as a Worshipful Master. Take me back to the first step. Was it, let's see, within 5 seconds of being raised to the sublime degree of a Master Mason when the master of the lodge came down and said, hey, you should be the steward in my line? Or was there some other motivation that encouraged you to take a leadership role and support your lodge?
Yeah, so I'm really happy that you asked that question, because I feel like this is a very important question, not just for me specifically, but for all Masons in particular, especially ones that feel like they want to go through the chairs or have the idea that they want to become a leader in their lodge. I would say I became a Master Mason, and about right after I became a Master Mason, I realized that there was a gap in the lineup, and there one of the members ended up leaving, I think, at senior deacon. And so the junior deacon position was opened up, because the person who was the junior deacon at the time actually stepped up to senior deacon about 3 months before. So that opportunity was open for me. And I didn't have anybody come up to me and tell me or try to push me into it or anything like that. I seen it as a way to better myself and to slowly start developing the skills that I needed to one day take over the lodge. And so I involved myself to the point where I let the guys know, hey, I would really like to take the junior deacon chair. I know I just became a master and all, but I think that I think it would really help to propel me in the direction that I'm looking to go, and it would help me to acquire the skills and the understanding that I need to continue through. And I might not even have been thinking about necessarily Worshipful Master at that point in time, but I knew that over the years and going through the different chairs and helping with the degrees, that it was going to help me get to that point to where I was going to develop those skills and the understandings to be able to run the lodge in a leadership role.
That's very that's a lot of confidence. Trying to keep it a G-rated show. That's very confident to walk up and say, "Hey, I want to sit in the junior deacon's chair." Most brothers start out in a steward position, or if there's a position lower, like a very junior entry level, like let's just get you familiar with kind of how the lodge functions, and you're doing simple things like helping cleaning up the lodge, either setting up the furnishings before our meetings, or cleaning them after dinners, or collecting money for the refreshments or whatever's going on. Very simple stuff. You jumped into a chair that already has a speaking part, at least in the opening and closing of the lodge. I'm not sure about, in ritual, but I'm sure that they found a way to have you involved with that at some point. Were there any other brothers that wanted to be in that spot, or did everybody say, "Hey, we got this like up and coming guy, like let's just step back and like let him do his thing"?
Yeah, so I fortunately for me there was a little gap there, and they were able to fill it if need be, but I was just so gung ho. They were basically going to recycle another one of the guys in the lodge to sit in that chair. And after doing our prove ups, I came in with three other guys at the same time. We're all the same age, and we're all good friends. And fortunately for me, the guy in front of me was one of those three guys. So he kind of almost paved the path for me to some extent. So I kind of already knew, like when he did the junior deacon role, I seen what he was doing, and I was like, yeah, that's not that big of a part. Like it's, you have a little bit at the start of the degree, and then you have a little bit through the degree, and that's about it. And then other than like carrying around the candidate with the senior deacon, that's essentially all the junior deacon was really doing for the most part. But I got a couple of my mentors and a couple other guys that I had that I was meeting in the district, and people who had my lodge would really encourage me to do the working tools or something like that at a installation. And so I had already done, I think I did like the EA, the Fellowcraft working tools. I think I did the Fellowcraft working tools at like 2 different lodges, and I did a couple other things. So I had gotten up and I'd spoken in front of a couple different lodges at a few different installations. And I think that really helped kind of let me focus where I wanted my attention to be. And it wanted to be on working on the ritual and working on the degree work and being a part of it and really immersing myself in that experience. And I can really, I can say that having a couple guys, not just in my lodge, but outside of my lodge, kind of encouraging me to take up those tiny little roles, building my confidence to be able to sit in the junior deacon chair and feel relatively confident going into it.
So I'm just sitting here thinking, you did all of this, and you were probably when you sat in the East as the master of your lodge, were you in your 30s at that point, or when you started, were you in your 30s, like early 30s?
Yeah, so I joined the lodge. I think it was actually 25 when I first started looking into the lodge, when a buddy of mine mentioned to me that he was joining, and I just got so ecstatic because I had never had any family or friends that I really knew of. And so
that were Masons.
That were Masons, yes, that were Freemasons, just so we're clear.
He's not living in exile on his island in Canada. He just
yeah, no kidding, right?
Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Yeah, no. Sorry, what was the question again? My bad.
Well, I was just sitting here thinking back, like, wow, you're 36 now, and I was 36. I was getting ready to reset, to go back to school, to start working on my master's degree. I still have 2 kids now, but they were much younger then. My oldest was getting ready to go into junior high school. My son was still in elementary school with like little flag football games and sports and all these other things. And I look at somebody your age and go, okay, if you're just starting out with your family, and probably at that age, like just starting out with your career, you don't really have time to do all of these other commitments that come with being a leader of the lodge, because a lot of guys will raise their hand and they'll say, yeah, I'm happy to sit in this appointed chair, or yes, I'll run for this elected chair office. But then it's like, oh, well, work and family first, lodge comes third, which should be the case. But that can also be detrimental to the lodge when the people who are elected or have raised their hand to say, I will be here for these nights, aren't there, and you're constantly having to fill that chair with someone else.
Yeah, that is definitely a struggle. So back to your point. So I became a master. Well, yeah, I became a Mason when I was 26. I think I got my Master Mason degree, funny story, on my 27th birthday.
Wow.
So that's a bit of a, so normally, obviously we do, well, obviously to you, we normally would do things on emergent meetings. And I asked them to do or get a dispensation, and we had it on a regular meeting, which happened to line up on my birthday, which I've never been one to care for my birthdays, but I can tell you right now that that's definitely a birthday I'm never going to forget about. Um, to
That is
continue
cool.
on
I'll
with
agree
that,
that,
right?
that's really cool. Yeah.
Now here's the really cool thing. So the first year, last year was my first year as master, and normally we just do 1 year terms, but I'm actually in my second term right now, just trying to help things get along, and it's looking like I'm going to be relieved this next year, which will be fantastic. But man, it's incredible just seeing the journey and getting to that destination of joining the lodge. 27 years old, I was thinking to myself, yeah, I want to become a master. It's going to take me at least 5 6 years to go through junior deacon, junior warden, senior warden, and then a master. So that's roughly 5 years from when I started the junior deacon role. And because of COVID, that kind of put a little bit of a damper on things. I ended up doing my junior warden year 2 times, which I still didn't really get a whole year out of my junior warden, which wasn't the biggest problem. But then when I went to go hit senior warden, everything kind of filled out and made more sense. And it really helped get me into that leadership role. And like I was saying before, one of the guys that I joined the lodge with, he was right in front of me. So when I was senior warden, he was my worshipful master, which was just a phenomenal thing to have. Like two young guys in the lodge, like when we went places and we would have people visiting with us, man, seeing the two of the three principal officers of the lodge being guys in their early 30s, it's kind of an amazing thing. It really it lets the other guys know and the other lodges know that Freemasonry is in good hands and that there's a younger generation taking over, to the extent that we're carrying on these traditions, we're carrying on
Let me
the education.
I want to get to that point because I feel,
Yeah.
unfortunately, for brothers your age and even younger, because in many parts of the U.S., you can be 18 now to be a Mason and petition a lodge, and other jurisdictions it's still at 21. But still, at that age, just as I kind of outlined with that scenario, like imagine a 20-something, you're basically a guy in college. Like maybe he has the time now, but Freemasonry is a way of life. You have all the way up until you literally lay down your working tools, and that's the last day that you're a Mason. I'm just curious, like, as a millennial, how did it resonate with you? Because the feeling when I sit in the lodge, and my lodge is the master in the East this year, and I look out and I see it's a completely different view than when I was junior warden or senior warden last year. Just not just the angle, but everything that goes with it. What did it feel like to you to be sitting there and going, I'm the guy in charge. I am the one who's responsible and accountable for this lodge?
Oh man, well it took a couple meetings to really set in the level the level of comfort. It's funny, when I was in my junior warden and senior warden years, I would have times where I'd come into the lodge, and right before lodge started, I would get the most brutal anxiety that you could possibly imagine, because I've never been a big fan of standing up in front of people and talking. But over the years, I've slowly worked myself into it. The first day I sat in as master, I did not even feel it. And it was an incredible feeling to not be overwhelmed with anxiety and to just sit there and, man, I finally did it. I worked towards this goal, and I got to this point, and I have amazing guys around me to help help boost me up and teach me the things that I need to know, and just help me out as I go along. But man, just sitting in that chair and realizing that you are the authority of the lodge. It's not just the fact that the lodge just gave you this title, but the fact that you are a leader for your lodge, and you're there to make your lodge proud. You're there to make the members proud. You're there to make people in your district proud. And if that's not why you're there, then why are you really there? Because at the end of the day, this really is servant leadership, and we really are serving the lodge. We can sit here and say, I'm the master of the lodge. I can do whatever I want. And although you are sovereign and you do have the right to, slam the gavel down, it's not going to do you so good when you're ruffling feathers and you're, slamming the gavel down at things that you really shouldn't be. And so understanding and learning that you are there to serve the lodge, you're there to serve the people in the lodge, and that's one of the most important parts of the job, is just is knowing not just your importance, but the importance of every member, and the importance of how to make each member feel like a valued part of the team, because that's what we are. We're all a team. We're all here to help each other. We're all here to build each other up. That's one of the reasons why I went to become a worshipful master, because I wanted to build myself up and I wanted to build other people along the way.
Yep.
And
Yeah, you talked about a really strong point, and I agree. Like the leadership, the managing of the lodge, that is such a key part of being the master of the lodge. But there's another part, worshipful, that I'm curious about. What did your trestle board look like? What does the Millennial Trestle Board? What kind of programs or events do you do? They're just these radical, crazy, fun party things.
Well, fortunately for me, I haven't tried to do anything too out of the box, which has been it's been received well as far as the old guards are concerned. I think there's definitely a line that you have to, especially when it comes to upholding our traditions and trying to not make too many innovations in the lodge, because I know that's a very scary word. People are very apprehensive about hearing the word innovation, especially when it comes to Freemasonry. And I definitely think, there's been things that we've done over time that we used to get together about 4 or 5 times a year, and we would have these big dinners. And after COVID, that a lot of that kind of stopped. But one of the things that we have continued with, and well, our memberships dwindled quite a bit since then as well too. One of the things that we've carried on with, that's been a massive thing. It's been an incredible thing for our lodge to do, and we have an outdoor lodge, and we actually just had it first weekend of July, and we have it at one of our members of the lodge. We've been doing it for, I don't want to say we've been doing the outdoor lodge for about 8-9 years now, and it's just phenomenal. We get guys from all over the island, all over the place, and that just really pitch in, and it's an incredible experience to be able to get all those guys together and really be able to bring everybody together and have an outdoor experience, have a little barbecue, bring all the friends and family, and just enjoy each other's company, enjoy each other, and then go and put a good degree on. We have our Grand Master out every year for that, so the Grand Line comes out. It's a big event, and so it's one of those things where it's just like, we don't have too many big events anymore that really drive people in and want people to be there. But man, the outdoor lodge is one of those experiences that are just way out there. It's an incredible experience to go through. And actually, I changed things up this last year, and I last month we did a double Master Mason degree, and we have never done a Master Mason degree at our outdoor lodge. So it threw some curveballs. Let's just say that.
Although I think, depending, because I think there are some really neat parts about doing that in certain lodge rooms, especially if you have a very pristine or highly decorated lodge room. For certain aspects of it, that'd be really neat. But being outside at certain points would really kind of tend to lend itself well, I think, to the story. The other thing that kind of impressed me, and again, being the middle something guy here, the 46-year-old, I've been able to work as a lodge Masonic education officer for my home lodge in New York. So I've worked with men who have an interest coming into the craft that were older than me, that were 60 or 70. And I was like, oh, okay, this is like working with my dad, or in some instances, almost my grandfather's age, a little bit younger than him, but okay. Like, this was kind of neat. I've also worked with younger guys. And I think the stereotype is, I keep, beating this drum is that people look at the younger guys that are coming into the craft that, oh, they don't really take this seriously. They don't. And I disagree. I have had so many wonderful conversations, which easily have gone for over an hour, where I'm not doing a lot of the talking, but they're asking a lot of the questions, coming in more informed or better informed, I would say, than brothers of my lodge, honestly, who kind of stopped doing any of the pursuit of light and masonry after they got the third degree. Like, these new guys that are just candidates or prospects are reading the books, are engaged, are starting to seek the truth or seek information on their own. And that's what I find so promising, is that this new generation that's coming in, just like the older generation, they are looking for those esoteric, those deeper meanings that are in all of the ritual. They just haven't gone through the degree work yet to really been shown the keys or to find their own path. So here's my $1 million question to ask you, and I don't want to put the weight of the world, but since I do have a millennial here, how can we engage you? How can we present leadership opportunities to men your age and surround them with the support that they need to take root and be the next generation of leaders of our lodge? Because without you, there's no future for the rest of us.
I fully agree on that. Because we are the next generation, as much as we want to admit it or not. I mean, I think that's part of the reason why I was saying before, when some of the older guys see some of the younger guys really taking big roles or taking part, it's amazing to see, because they realize that the torch is going to get passed, and that's the big part of it. I think it's a tough one when it comes to engaging with millennials, because one thing that I've found is we've had guys join the lodge who are younger guys, and they seemed really interested and really keen. And then once they got the second or the third degree, and they think to themselves, okay, that's it. And we try to reiterate that whole idea that no, this isn't it. This is just the foundation, and now this is where the real work begins. And I think it's tough, because I think with millennials especially, they're so go, 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 especially like what you were saying before, like, you're in those formative years of like either college or building a family or so on and so forth. How did I find the time to be able to put to all this masonry? Well, I made the time, because that's how important it was to me. And I can't say the same for everybody else my age. There are definitely, I got 3 guys in my lodge right now who I joined the lodge with. Those were the 3 guys I joined with, and they've been instrumental in being part of the lodge and just immersing themselves into all of it. I can't say the same about everybody that's in our age category. I think it's really hit or miss, which is unfortunate to say. Like, I really wish there was this overarching like way to get all these guys in. But like, I'll tell you, when I first joined the lodge, the reason why I wanted to join was because of knowledge, not necessarily because of any specific knowledge. I knew that I wanted to learn worldly knowledge. And so for me, that's what really pulled me in. And I find a lot of other younger guys that are my age who I talk to about that, what excited you? What made you want to be a Freemason? And some of them, is, oh, my grandpa was a Freemason and he's a great guy. And, I really wanted to make him proud. So I decided to take that step. And then you have other guys like me who were looking for knowledge, looking for information, looking for something else to build onto, something else to grab onto, and to really help propel you into being the person that you want to be. And I think it's very tough, because I think some guys just look at it, will come in and just see it as a social club. And so that might be the reason why they joined, is because, oh, hey, I've seen some younger guys in the lodge. I think that's really cool. They're probably bringing life to the lodge, or, we're probably going to have, parties, and it's going to be really exciting. And, I hate to admit it to you, but it's not going to be a party. There's times where, we might have a drink or two and enjoy each other's company. But for the most part, we're kind of here to work together to help build each other, to help build the lodge, to help build us as individuals. And if that's not what you're coming into the craft for, then I can't really see another reason why you would want to join, really, whether or not, you're a young guy or not. And I
Yeah.
think I think that resonates all age categories for the most part, in the sense that, like, I've had older guys join the lodge, get an EA degree, and then realize this is not what I thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of hard to relay that kind of understanding, that it's like, hey, this is what, you're going to learn memory work. You're going to, you're going to commit certain things to memory. And then once they realize the amount that you have to commit, it becomes this daunting task. And I think for some young people, it's easier to just say, you know what, that's not what I was going for, and just walk away from it. Because I've seen
Yeah.
a couple of young guys walk away from that, who are very smart, very intelligent individuals, but I feel like it just wasn't the right time for them. So in that regard, I think some people, I think the timing is just there, and I think their goals are aligning with Freemasonry at that time, and it makes it a lot more easy for them to join and actually immerse themselves into the craft.
Let me get you out of here on this question, Worshipful. You and I discussed this, I think, in a previous conversation, one of my famous late night video conversations, where I think you're, what, 4 hours? I'm in DC and you're in BC, so there's a couple time zone changes in between us.
It's
But
3 hours.
3? Good.
Yeah.
It felt like 4. No, just kidding. we had we had a previous episode with brother Matthew Brockbank, who's also a millennial, and we talked about the idea that Freemasonry as a fraternity, that's a big F, not a little f, is dying, in the sense that our members, our lodges, our communities even are not really supporting the craft or Masons as strongly as they once did in the years past, right? And it's just a sign of the times. But it's okay. If Freemasonry is dying, the good news is it's not dead, and there's a lot that we can do to keep it relevant and keep it moving in the forward for the future. And that's what I wanted to ask you. Every brother has an opinion on this one, but what opportunities do you see for Freemasonry to adapt or evolve into the 21st century?
Oh man, that is a phenomenal question, because I think there's a multitude of answers to that question, and I think that we can look at it a bunch of different ways. Um, I would have to say, for me, when I think about that, I think about the innovations that we can make that aren't disrupting the traditions that we've been carrying for a long time. And I think part of that goes into one specific thing that I can think of right off the top of my head is, I'm sure a lot of the lodges are aware of the scroll, where you have all the degree work, where you lay out the degree, and when you're doing the lecture, you have the scroll rolled out, you have it on the big, have set it up. It's right in front of the candidate; they can see it. You got your little pointer there. Well, years ago, my lodge and many other lodges around my district started getting TVs inside the lodge, to the point where, and now they can display images so the entire lodge can see. So it's not just one person being involved in that. Another thing, and that's just a small little thing. That's just like, it goes from being a very personal thing of just the candidate really just receiving those symbols and things like that, to the whole lodge is now listening to it. The whole lodge is paying attention to it. And I think that's a very important thing, in the sense that over time, the more we hear the ritual, the more we get out of it, regardless of how much you think you know the ritual. Another thing too, I would say, is we have what's called as I can't remember what it's called, but it's like the trestle board something or other, but it's connected to our Grand Lodge, and it's adjacent to our Grand Lodge, and some members of all the districts have gotten together, and they put in all the information for all of British Columbia and Yukon. So now you can just go to this web page and you can look on a calendar, and it'll show you the whole month, every single lodge. You can go to every single district. You can go to individual districts. You can go to individual lodges, and it tells you everything that's happening that whole month for everything. Everything in BC, everything on the island, and so on and so forth. So for me, that tool is just such an important tool to have, especially when we're coming into this 21st century. I can tell you right now, in the 20th century, we definitely did not have any tools like that. Where a lot of the
Hmm.
times you would have to keep up with brothers from other lodges and stay in contact with secretaries, or you would have to affiliate with another lodge in order to get the email, or the, sorry, not the email, that's a little far back, a little too far forward. Getting the snail mail, where
Mm-hmm.
telling,
The old
giving
lodge
you your
bulletin.
summons. Exactly. And so, I mean, these, just those couple small things, like, I know they're things that I don't feel like they're innovating too much. We're still upholding the same traditions, we're still upholding the same ideals, but we're bringing life to it. And also with our web pages and stuff, I can tell you right now, we've had a number of hits. A number of people have, sought out the lodge because they realized that there was a web page and
Hmm.
you can email and so on and so forth. So, it's all these little things, like, just there's little bits of technology that we can integrate into the system that we already currently have, just to add that little bit more, either whether or not it's for information or knowledge. Another thing is, before I even joined the lodge, I actually went to my Grand Lodge's page, Grand Lodge of British Columbia and Yukon, and I went and searched up all the positions, all the roles, what they did. And so, like, I knew who the junior warden and the senior warden was, and, the deacons and all that other stuff. I knew who they all were and what their positions were, because I had the ability to go onto the website, look up that information. I could tell you right now, in in previous generations, that was not an option. It was like
Hmm.
you basically would have to know somebody in the lodge to get anything like that. And even at that, I mean, the chances of somebody from the lodge explaining to you those types of things before you even become a Freemason, it's not very well, like, it's just not something that really happens. So just having these little tools, the internet that we have, these little these things that we have, that really just add and allow us to have a bigger reach, not just in the sense that we can reach a few more brothers across, BC or whatever, but in the sense that, oh, hey, I can check out, oh, this lodge is meeting on this night, and oh, they're doing something special. I'm gonna make time to go do that because I see it on the calendar. Whereas, you really, otherwise you wouldn't even know about it, right?
Mm. The wise man from the island. That's what we're going to start calling him. Worshipful brother, Will Rothery, thank you so much for taking some time and joining us. Time zone changes apart. It's always good to catch up with you. You're one of the sharpest, brightest minds I think we have for the future of the craft, and I'm really excited. And I think your brothers around you are very fortunate to have you in the spot that you're in.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And honestly, thank you very much for having me on the podcast. I know the first couple times I listened to a few episodes, and I ended up reaching out to you, and I was just really excited to even be able to have a conversation with you. So, you know, coming to this point, I feel like we're coming a little full circle.
Nice. Yeah. It is interesting because I'll get a few emails like yours, for example, and then my wife will be like, "Where are you going?" As I'm walking outside of the backyard, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to go talk to a brother on the phone." And I'm like, she has no idea. And it is a highlight because just as you're like, "Hey, there's actually this person that I hear their voice, they actually do interact with people that would email them."
Mhm,
I'm like, "Hey, this person who listens to this podcast that finds these guests relevant and interesting, they actually want to
mhm.
listen to me talk to them." So it's a two-way street, and I really appreciate it as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, man. It's phenomenal to come on the podcast, and I just want to say you're doing a fantastic job. I think your podcast specifically stands out, not just to me, but I'm sure to a lot of brothers who are looking for just the knowledge and information that a lot of your guests are coming on. And I think that you have a lot of amazing topics that you hit on. So thank you for doing that, because man, it's been a joy to listen to.
Awesome. I appreciate it.